Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to day 3 of the 21-day self-love challenge. And the first 2 days we're talking about our thoughts and how a lot of times we can be driven and controlled by our thoughts because we are believing them and identifying with them. So today I had originally wanted to talk about something completely different, but what I'm going to actually talk about today just keeps coming in really strong, so I'm switching it up, going rogue. I have nothing really prepared, so it's just me winging it here. But what I want to talk about today is the 4 Agreements. It's a book by Don Miguel Ruiz, and it was incredibly transformational for me after I read that. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that if you haven't read it yet, that you get it. It's really a quick read. It's easy. Like, I didn't read really until I got my hands on that book, and then it was like I couldn't stop reading. So yeah, the last 2 days we've been talking about our thoughts, separating ourselves from our thoughts, and then kind of questioning the story, questioning where it's coming from, questioning if the thought is true. And I really feel like bringing the 4 Agreements in right now is like super profound. It like these things happen for me every single day. Like, I still get very triggered. I still have emotions, sensations in my body that come up, like anxiety. And when it does, I just have the tools now to work through it instead of letting it kind of take over and control my behaviors and such. And the 4 Agreements really helped me with this. So I'm going to get into it. The 4 Agreements are taking things personally. Don't take things personally. Making assumptions. Always do your best. And being impeccable with your word. So, whenever I first read the book, my tendencies were to take things personally. So that was like, becoming aware of a thought, separating yourself from the thought, figuring out where it comes from and if it's true, right? And then the next thing you can do with these thoughts, because a lot of the time these thoughts are like the emotion that comes after it comes because we took the thought personally, or whatever the person did to us or said. Maybe they said something about like wearing pink, and then I take that and say, oh, I must be bad because I'm wearing pink. Like, even though them having an issue with people wearing pink is a them problem and not a me problem, it becomes a me problem if I believe that there's something wrong with wearing pink. Does that make sense? So for me, as I started separating from my thoughts and figuring out where they were coming from and figuring out how they were triggering my emotions, a lot of the time it was because I was taking things personal. And then the next big one for me was making assumptions, right? So like somebody says something, and then you take your past experience, your past knowledge, whatever's going on with you, and make an assumption about that person. And this one is a big one too. So whenever I'm feeling any sort of way that's not comfortable, I really get clear on the thoughts I'm thinking, where they came from, if they're true. Am I taking it personal? Am I personalizing this person's stuff and making it mine? Am I assuming something? Like, do I need more clarity as to what they were saying? Sometimes people will say something and we'll like get offended about it. And that's because we made an assumption that, and took it personally probably, that they were talking about us. And we make an assumption about what they're saying, you know. And the thing with the assumptions is you can start asking questions to clarify. Like, what did you mean by that? Or can you tell me more? Like, understanding really clears up so much conflict. And I honestly feel like most of the conflicts that we are in, even internally, it comes from a lack of understanding. And how do you understand something? You get inquisitive about it. You get curious about it. Instead of trying to like blame, shame, you know, we ask questions. We assume, you could assume that they don't have bad intent, you know, if you're going to assume anything. But I wouldn't do that either. Ask questions and figure out what's really going on, you know, get curious and then gain that understanding, and it helps so much. Another big one in there was always do your best, which, you know, I was like a perfectionist sort of person, like performing, always trying to do my best, you know. And I remember there was a time in therapy, and I was talking to the therapist about, you know, some of the things that I'm not so proud of. And she asked me, you know, were you doing the best you could at the time with the knowledge you had? And at first, my answer was like, no, I could have done a lot better, you know? And then she asked me, like, well, what could you have done differently? You know? And I had to think about it long and hard. And that's whenever I came to the realization that may be unpopular, but I truly believe it to my core. And I think it makes all the difference in the world if you give people this grace. Everyone is doing the best they can with the knowledge that they have in that moment. So if somebody is behaving in a way that is like destructive, it's because that's the only way that they know how. And they don't need judgment, they don't need criticism, they don't need shame. They already have that, you know? Like, what they need is tools and understanding of where they're at, where they need to go, what they want to do, you know? So that profound thought has changed so much for me. It's allowed me to give me grace to myself, and instead of being like, oh, I didn't do the best I could, it's like, well, how can I do better? You know, like, if this happens again, what is the plan to do better? You know, and it gives you that motivation to seek out the tools that you can use to do better in the future. A lot of this stuff we weren't taught. In fact, we were taught like to do the opposite. So it's not like common knowledge all the time. Like, I had to dig for a lot of this. Like, I went on like a search mission, you know? And in that digging, there's a lot of like pushback from society, you know? There's like, people don't want to believe that, people really struggling are doing the best that they can. Like, just work harder, Like, but it's like, have you walked in their shoes? And I believe that too. Anybody who has walked through your shoes, had all of your experiences, would be doing the same thing that you're doing. So we're all just here to walk each other home, Assuming that people are doing the best that they can with what they know in this moment it just takes away the shame and the judgy, and like, it sets the groundwork down to be able to understand, so that maybe you can give them a hand and the tools they need to rise above that. We've all been there, And then what was the last one? Impeccable with your word. This one, I thought whenever I read the book that like I was really good at it. And I am. I'm a very honest person. I put a very high value on truth and honesty. Authenticity is like kind of tied to being honest, because if you're not being authentic, you're not being honest, right? So I thought that like I had that one down, but as I integrated it into my life, I quickly found myself. My biggest one with this was like telling people, saying yes whenever I really meant no, and then like not showing up because I really meant no. So I've gotten a lot more careful about that. Like, I won't say yes or no for sure. I need time to think about it before I will commit to something. And especially with my kids, I wanted to say yes to everything for them, so I would, but then I was like not performing the things that I would say all the time. So, you can say maybe, let me think about it. Yeah. Or you can just say no. But it also is like being honest. Like, if you say something, you say you're going to do something, then do it. If you say something out loud, like, is it true? I had seen this thing yesterday online. I didn't realize it was a thing because I had incorporated it into my life a couple years ago. And I say it to my kids all the time. And it's like, whenever you're speaking, is what you're saying true? Is it relevant? Is it kind? And after I incorporated that into my life, I was silent for a while. Because apparently nothing I said was like relevant, true, and kind. And it felt like, I was never going to be able to talk again, because all the things that I was talking about was like not really relevant, might be true, might not be. And a lot of things weren't kind, gossiping, criticizing, those things are not kind. And a lot of the times they're not true either. So being aware of what you are saying. Complaining is another big one. Anytime you're complaining, it's like you're judging the other thing. And you're putting yourself up here and that down there. And that is something to look at inside of yourself if you feel so inclined to do. But in regards to like how to use this, it's like the first step, the day one, was realizing that you are not your thoughts, and kind of just becoming aware of them and creating that space between you and your thoughts, right? In that space is where we can reflect. We can reflect on whether the thought is true, where it is coming from. If the thoughts are triggering sensations and emotions in your body, you can look at it and say, am I making this personal when it's not? Because, and I highly recommend the book. I'm just giving you the 4 agreements. There's so much more in there, like, to help you separate yourself from the pain bodies of others, the unconsciousness of others. Like 99%, if not 100, of what other people are saying and doing to you isn't about you. It's something going on inside of them. And if you can think back onto yourself when you've been in a time where you've done something that you're not so proud of, like maybe you snapped or you yelled or you said something that you didn't really mean, like think back to that time and what was going on with you and inside of you. And it was like probably not much to do with that other person, but more of an accumulation of several other events that gets spewed out onto that person. So not taking things personally, realize, like, in that space that you've created between who you are and what you're thinking, you can realize, oh, I'm taking this personal. And then you can kind of shift that into, you know, you can take your part of it, you know, if you did do something that was hurtful or whatever, but you don't make it all about you, you know? Same thing with making assumptions. That space, you can ask yourself, am I making an assumption here? And then you can follow up with questions to gain the clarity, to gain the understanding that is missing. Most conflicts, misunderstandings come because someone made an assumption and then made it true, and it may not be. So, you know, clarifying whether or not your assumption is actually a fact is really big, and it gets rid of a lot of conflicts. Know that you're always doing your best with what you have. Know that other people are doing the best with what they have. You know, if you don't like what somebody else is doing, maybe offer them a hand. Now, of course, they have to want to be different. You know, they have to want that change. But if they don't, then that's fine too. You just let it go. It's not about you. The only thing is about you is, like, you're doing the best that you can with what you have. Is that to your standard, or do you want to learn to be better? You know, we can always all get better at just about anything, right? Nobody here is perfect at something. You know, we might be really good at something, but perfect? Perfectly imperfect. And being impeccable with your word during that space that you're like, I know I used to just like say what I was thinking, which was not very impeccable. I would, you know, just think that because I had a thought, it needed to be out in the world. But that space, and then asking yourself, is it true? Is it kind? Is it relevant? Before it comes out, you know? Did I take it personal? Did I make an assumption? You know, whenever you're asking your questions, you want to be asking questions that are kind, true, and relevant, right? So that space allows for all of these things to occur. And as you practice it, like I say, these are things that I do every single day. Like whenever there's thoughts and sensations in my body, I come in and I'm like, hey, what's going on? You know, like what is making me feel this way? And it's just so profound what can shift in that little bit of space that you allow yourself. The transformations that can occur. You know, I have an example. The other day, my husband is wanting me to do something. And like, I'm not ready to do it yet. I know I need to do it, but I'm not quite there yet. So he's telling me to do this thing, and I'm like, okay, maybe, whatever. And then a couple days ago, he texted me, he's like, hey, have you done this thing yet, right? Like, so my initial response to that was like, he is trying to control me, he is trying to do this, you know, he is manipulating me, and like, I did not like the way it felt. And so when he asked me if I'd done it yet, you know, I just said no. I didn't explain anything, and that felt good, the boundary thing. But I also sat with myself in the feelings that I was having, and I created that space. Like, what are the thoughts going through my head right now, right? He's trying to manipulate me and control me, and he's like thinking all these things because I told him no. Like, I was feeling all of that resistance, you know, from setting the boundary. And so that space was like, well, what if he's not trying to control me? What if he's just trying to ask questions to get information? You know, I'm taking it personal. I'm making assumptions. I'm assuming he's not doing the best that he can. I was not unimpeccable with my word, though, because I went through all those things, and I just said no. And had he asked for clarity as to why I haven't done what he's wanting me to do, I would have explained to him what I'm kind of working through. I've learned to not just tell him because I don't think he really cares, but he accepted the no. He didn't ask for more information. He's not mad about it, like, but in my mind, at first, it was like a full-on conflict, a fight. Like, he was trying to, like, you know, make me do something that I'm not ready to do yet. And so that's an example of a day-to-day way that I incorporate these practices into my life. So the challenge today is, when you are having this sensation, to continue to do the things from day 1 and 2, noticing that it's a thought and it's not who you are, and creating that space in between, questioning where it came from and its validity. Is it true? And then incorporating these 4 agreements in, like, which of these 4 agreements, it's normally one of them, if not 2 or 3 or 4. And just kind of feeling into that, like, am I taking it personal? Is it personal? Am I making an assumption? Do I need to ask questions to clarify? Am I being impeccable with my word? A lot of the times we feel guilt. I know I do. Whenever we say something that we don't mean, or we say something that, like, we commit to something and then we back out. So just being aware of that, bring awareness to that. And then always doing your best. Remind yourself you're doing the best with what you know. You know, and if there's something that you want to do better, find somebody who is, like, done it and study them. You know, find 2 or 3 or 4 people, because, you know, we're all different. Maybe you'll find something from here and there and the other and whatever. But know that you are doing the best that you can, you know, and so is everybody else. But to decrease these conflicts, especially internally, note When are you taking things personal? When are you making assumptions? When are you not being impeccable with your word? And just know that you're doing the best that you can with what you have. All right, that's all I have for today. Thank you. Mwah.